Hi, I'm Julia from Julia Davey Limited. I'm going to be showing you today a short tutorial on digital transfers and how we apply those to fine bone china. Okay, so a few of the things that you'll need here. So we've got some digital transfers selection on the table, a bowl of cold water, and it has to be cold. I'll explain why in just a minute. Your china that you'll be decorating, some scissors, now these can be any size as long as you're comfortable with using them just for a little while at a time, and some absorbent cloth. We've got some kitchen towel that we provide in the kit or a soft cotton cloth. So we're going to start today's tutorial just like this. We're going to start with cutting our transfers out. Now you'll have a range of transfers to use. You'll have some where you've got a long line of animals or creatures, and you'll have some where there's individual transfers that you can cut out, and it'll be up to you what you want to use on your piece of china. So you need to make that decision first, what design you want. There's something to consider when you've got a massive sheet like this. You might want to chop it down before you start wibbling in and out of all these little guys here. It just makes it so much easier. So take your big massive sheet and just chop off this strip that you want to use. Don't go too close to those characters. You'll chop off an ear or a tail or something awful. So then once you've got that, think again, do you really need this little section here? Get down to what you really want to focus on before you start cutting. It really helps. So I'm going up to my bird, in and out. This just means that the transfer is a little bit more flexible when you're applying it onto your china. As I said before, the more white that we've got to try and apply, the harder it'll be really for us. So we're just trying to make our job easier. And it's as simple as that. So we've got our cut transfer there. So I would recommend, if you've got a range of little tiny ones, to cut quite a range because you're not entirely sure how many you're going to use on your china. So you can see here that I've done a flamingo range of transfers, and they're different sizes and shapes, so that I've got plenty to apply onto my mug in a minute. So when you've got your transfer cut, if it's in a long line, as I say, the most important thing is that we don't try and apply this all at once. If it was me, and I've been doing this for about 10 years, I would. But for you guys starting out, it's not going to be very easy to have this wet and keep following it around and applying it all at the same time. You can also see there's a bit of excess on this one. So what I'd recommend is to have a little place on your china, see how it works for you, have a think which characters you want on there and which you don't, and then chop it into sections based on that decision. So I think I might quite like to keep some of these guys together. I think it would be nice to have my fox and my deer together. So I'm going to make sure I've definitely got those two chaps, but I'm going to cut them into smaller sections, and I might place them so I can remember what order they go in. And I think I'll probably try and have maybe a squirrel and possibly a rabbit. So I'd know that that would pretty much fit around the surface of my jug, give or take. We can always use some of the lines or the sections from him here just to make those up if we've got a little gap. So now we've got our transfers cut, we need to submerge them in the water. As I said earlier, it has to be cold water. If it's warm water, the transfer starts to crinkle, almost like plastic would do a crisp packet in the oven or something like that. So cold water is great. Normal water doesn't have to be anything special, and a bowl large enough just to let the transfers curl in there nice and easily. You're not going to leave them in there too long. Too long they become super friendly, get stuck to each other, and are a nightmare for you. So you want to leave them in there for 20 seconds, nothing more than that, okay? And when you bring them out, make sure again that you separate them on the table. If you leave them lying on top of each other, you'll have exactly the same problem. They'll start sticking to each other and you'll rip things. Okay, so we've got our china, and the first decision we've got to make is how we're going to decorate this in terms of aesthetically. So do we want stuff on the inside or just the outside? Is there going to be anything on the bottom? So have a little think. If you want something on the inside, you have to do it first. And the reason for that is that once you've got a little guy floating around in the middle there, it's fine, it's protected, and you can just carry on with the outside. If you do it the other way round and you've put all your transfers on and they're all beautifully placed, but then you start wiggling them with your fingers whilst you're trying to get something on the inside, it's just so difficult. So yeah, if you're going to put one on the inside, you've got to do it first. So I'll start with the flamingos because they were soaked a couple of minutes ago. And you can see now that they really wiggle easily off of that backing film. And what we can do now is place it on our china wherever we would like to start. So I'm going to have a flamingo right in the corner here. And this is where you'll need to take your absorbent cloth. So you're ready to put it finally on your china. So the minute we start taking any moisture out of the transfer, it will start to become harder to move. So it really is a chance now to do final decision making in terms of where you want to place it. And then when you're sure, you take your cloth and you just wipe quite firmly across the top of your film. Now all I'm trying to do here is hold and anchor that transfer with my thumb whilst I remove the water. If I don't, your transfer will just sort of slide off. So you and sort of go everywhere. So you really need to make sure that you're holding it quite firmly while you're doing that. You'll also find that if you do this too firmly and you start to pull, I could probably show you on this one here, you'll break it quite quickly. So you have to be really careful that you go firmly but not too hard. So I'll replace that one quickly here with this guy. And then you can just work your way round. And a straight-sided mug is perfect for beginners because it's straight-sided. There's no curves to worry about. No air bubbles are going to get trapped in it. So there we go. That's sort of working nicely. And I'd say you would just keep going. Okay, so I wanted to talk about air bubbles. So an air bubble will be a little bubble that's got trapped underneath the surface of the film, and that's going to be a problem in the firing because when it goes in the kiln, that bubble will pop and it will make all of the image that was on top of that bubble just disappear. You'll be left with a little burnout hole. So we need to avoid that at all costs. So if you've gone away and you've come back and you can see there's a little bubble there, or when you're working on your piece, you need to get rid of it straight away. If it's still wet, force it to the edge with your cloth. If it's been a while, you're going to need something a bit more drastic. So take some snips, or a little pin is brilliant, and you're just going to wiggle it on top of the bubble so you break the top of the surface of the film, and then you can take your cloth and you can just get rid of all of that moisture and air that is that bubble under the surface, and that'd be perfect. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was some of you have got some domed surfaces. So that's something like a lid where the surface is curved, and it just means that something flat won't necessarily want to sit on there very easily. So I just wanted to show you a tip using another trusty flamingo that I've got here. So you can see it's already wibbling around. It's already been dunked in the water, but I'm just going to make a couple of, I call them like easing snips really, just around the edge of that character. If you've tried it already and you're just finding that it's not sitting right and it's just not adhering to that surface, just go take it off and put it back on the backing paper, or you can try a completely new transfer. And then what you need to do is just little top tip, pop a little bit of water on your finger, put it on that surface before you put your transfer on. So then, now you've got your easing snips, it should be happier just to curve round and behave itself, basically. And that one's great. And that's exactly the same whether you're doing a lid for a trinket box or a lid for a butter dish. Probably the most tricky item that we've given you to decorate is the toast rack, simply because the areas, the gaps in between these pieces are quite small. So I've already cut out my transfers for this one, but you can see when I come to place them inside those sections, there isn't much room for me to work in. So I would just recommend, again, it's exactly the same technique, but just being careful how you hold your toast rack whilst you're doing it. So if you can carefully hold and support that transfer and the toast rack at the same time, then you can get the little fellows to sit in between. But it is a trickier gap to get your fingers in. So just have a little play around, and there'll be plenty of spares if the odd one takes a little break. Great, so thanks for following along with our tutorial today. Hopefully you've got a really lovely piece of china now that you're really happy with, beautifully decorated. If you've got that and it's one of our kits, you're going to be sending it back to us. We'll just pop it in the post again to you soon. If it's you're following along in a professional capacity, just a little end note on firing. So your supplier of those transfers will give you a little bit of guidance. There'll be a tolerance in temperature of what those inks can go up to and be happy with. So do follow their guidelines, but mine in particular is between 820 and 840 degrees. It's a low firing. And because you've got a finished piece of ceramic, you can do quite a quick ramp. So you can do 150 degrees up to sort of 300 or so. I just then go full whack up to 840, and it needs a little soak at the top there. And that's just to allow those inks just to bed in to the glaze that's on the china. So that's what that's there for. So thanks ever so much for joining us. As I said, I hope you had a great time making your china, and hopefully you'll be back and following us again on another video soon.